Hello and welcome to a series of talks called Enter His Heart, helping us to live the solemnity of the Sacred Heart, the feast we are heading towards. In our life and in the history of the Church, what we take for granted, we forget to hand on. What we don't hand on, others simply don't receive. What we assume in our generation gets forgotten by the next generation. In a family I know, they are very devout. They pray the rosary daily, they go to Mass on Sundays and other days when they get the chance. And they're very strong, convinced about their morals, about their faith, their dogma, very active in the pro-life area. And yet their eldest son grew up only seeing memorized prayers, devotions that they would carry out, only understanding morals in terms of things he's not allowed to do. He called it a religion of no's. And he rejected their faith and walked away. And there's even a split in the family. They had taken for granted that the faith is a connection with God, with Mama Mary. They hadn't handed that on to him. And he didn't receive it. And he walked away. The other children were able to learn from that. And they were able to help there, but there's still that wound in the family. In the history of the Church, the same things can happen. Things that we take for granted, things that we assume everyone knows, we forget to hand on to the next generation. In the Middle Ages, people knew about God's love, people knew about God's presence, but the leaders in the Church and in dogma were focused not about, okay, we know that, but about, okay, how do we explain God's providence, God's knowledge, God's power, and they dedicated their time to that, taking for granted God's love. Later generations didn't receive that understanding of God's love, and one of them, Cornelius Jansenus, started focusing on, okay, how do I understand God's power, grace, salvation, and human freedom? How do I get that all together? And he hadn't received an understanding of God's love there. The result is something that still haunts us today. It's like a ghost that has never really gone away. The ghost is that what Jansenus said is that we're going to relate to God just through power, willpower, making the right decisions, and through knowledge, knowing our faith, and through saying words, through devotional piety, through simply saying the rosary and going to Mass. Again, done simply through willpower and through knowledge, and nothing to do with the heart, nothing to do with love. He even came to believe that if you were enjoying your prayers, you must be sinning, because for him every enjoyment, everything that came from the heart was sinful. God wanted our willpower and our intelligence, and that was it. And you will still find people who believe that way today, even though the Church has condemned Jansenism as a heresy. People who believe that if they're enjoying themselves, something has to be wrong because God doesn't like it when we have fun. People who think that as long as I say the right words, that's more important than if I actually connect to God in my heart. And as Jansenism grew in France, Jesus appeared to a nun, St. Margaret Mary Alacoque, and he said, look at this heart that has so loved mankind and now is being rejected by people who are just focusing on what to do or what to say or what to think. All I want is your love, Jesus said. I want to be loved. See, for Jesus, sharing a joke with him, laughing with God, is more important than 100 or 100,000 angry Hail Marys. For Jesus, sharing a life with him is more important than knowing all of your dogma. A single simple prayer, as St. Teresa, the Child Jesus, showed, is more important than the greatest complication if your heart is not in it. Jesus doesn't mind when people are ignorant. When people are even weak, he doesn't mind. All he wants is for them to love. So as we head towards this feast, let this be the first step. The Sacred Heart comes from the desire of Christ, for you to feel his love in your heart and for you to love him from the heart. He wants to fill you and bless you. God bless and see you tomorrow.